Today's Manna. 가스펠라이프 철치 데니얼 킴 목사가 보내드리는 시간입니다.
Hello to the friends and family of KCBS. My name is Daniel and welcome to today's Manna. I think there is something in our life that just does not know how to stop. We say that we trust God, but we actually check email one more time. We preach that He is sovereign, but we plan as if anything depends on us. We tell others to rest, but secretly, we believe our momentum is actually what holds everything together. And then Sabbath shows up like a quiet and a stubborn invitation. It's not as a suggestion, not as self-care, not as a productivity hack, but it's actually an invitation of obedience. And I want to encourage you here today. Our Sabbath actually begins with God and not really with us. The first time we see rest in Scripture, it is not exhausted humanity collapsing, but it actually is God. And on the seventh day, God finished His work, and then He rested, which is written in Genesis chapter 2, verse 2. You see, God was not tired. He was complete. Rest was actually not recovery, it was an enjoyment. And Sabbath is not you merely stopping activity, but it is stepping back to delight in what God has done in your life. Before sin, before hustling, before thorns and the sweat, there was a rhythm. It was 6 days of forming and 1 day of beholding, which means that Sabbath is woven into creation itself. It is not legalism, and it's actually a design. When we ignore Sabbath, we are not just being strong, we are resisting how we were built. And Sabbath is also a freedom from Egypt, as you see in Exodus chapter 20. You see, when the command appears again, it is actually given to the former slaves. You see, slaves never got the days off. They were valued by output. And God says to them, saying that you are going to rest. Not because you earned it, not because the production slowed, but because you are no longer owned. You see, Sabbath is actually a rebellion against Pharaoh. And here's the uncomfortable part. That Pharaoh is not just historical, it actually still lives in our internal voice. Where we say, do more. Where we say, prove yourself. Where they say, don't fall behind. And if you stop, you're going to lose ground. And Sabbath is a weekly declaration. Where you're saying, I'm not a slave to achievement. Where you're saying, I'm not sustained to my striving. And God runs a universe without my anxiety. And that hits different when you're leading it. Because ministry can quietly turn into Egypt with a cross on top. And also, you must remember from Mark chapter 2 that Jesus also talks about the controversy of rest. We see Sabbath had become heavy in Mark chapter 2. And the rules were stacked on rules, and guardrails are built around the guardrails. And then Jesus says, hey, the Sabbath was made for men, not men for the Sabbath. Where you see Jesus is healing on the Sabbath. He restores on the Sabbath. He confronts legalism on the Sabbath, because Sabbath was never meant to suffocate. It was actually meant to restore. Jesus does not abolish rest, but He actually clarifies it. And Sabbath is not restriction. It's actually about restoration of the whole person, body, soul, community, and joy. And when you read the Gospels, you see something striking. Jesus withdraws. He steps away from the crowds. He leaves pressing needs unmet for a moment, and He prays and He rests. And if the Son of God did not operate on constant availability, why do we think we must? The book of Hebrews speaks on a deeper rest. It's a rest that remains for the people of God. Ultimately, the Sabbath is not just 1 day, it actually points to trust. It's the posture that says the work of salvation is finished, the weight of the world is not mine to carry, Christ has completed what I could not. And there is a weekly Sabbath, and there is a lifelong Sabbath that rests in grace. When you and I refuse Sabbath, we often reveal something subtle. We believe we are more necessary than we are, but God builds His church and He convicts the hearts. God sustains the campus. God grows what you plant because you are called to be faithful and not. Which I want to encourage you here today. If you're in a season where you're leading people in your work, in your church, I want to encourage you that Sabbath is not optional fuel, but it is actually oxygen. Without it, you're going to still preach. Without it, you're still going to plan. But slowly, you're going to realize your soul is going to thin out. And your work in ministry without Sabbath eventually becomes mechanical. You cannot lead people into green pastures if you never lie down in them. Sabbath protects tenderness. Sabbath protects joy. Sabbath protects humility.
지금까지 가스펠라이프 철치의 데니얼 킴 목사였습니다. 성경이나 예수 그리스도에 관해서 더 알기를 원하시는 분은 시카고 기독교 방송 전화 847-583 영원 구원으로 연락 바랍니다.